Hello fellow Scratchers, welcome back to lesson 2 of our text engine tutorial. So did you decide to use my default project font or have you found your own font to import? Do let me know in the comments under this video. This week we are going to use our font to write out full sentences, but we have to be careful not to leave any word overflowing the edge of the dialog box. For this reason, we're going to learn how to measure the text a word at a time, and when there is insufficient room, wrap the text down onto the next line. Excellent. So load up your projects from the last lesson. This is lesson 2. Guys, let's get scratching. Okay, so firstly, do you have an appropriate dialog box sprite ready to begin writing text to? If not, then you're going to need to create a new sprite and draw one. But if you remixed my starter project, then you're in luck. An example dialog sprite is already here. But the next step is to define the safe zone within the dialog where our text can be written to. So click into the dialog sprite now. Now this is a really simple sprite, no scripts, it's just got this hand-drawn simple dialog with a happy scratch cat on the left, and I have another costume set for Nano on the right. So you can see you can easily set this up for multiple characters and have their own special stylized dialog boxes. Script-wise, we're just going to want a when green flag clicked, and then we'll position this dialog down towards the bottom with a go to 0 and minus 110. Just customize that so that it looks good on your project. And now, because those different costume dialogs can be completely different to each other, we need a way of defining the safe rectangle our text can appear in for each of the different costumes. So what we're going to do is create a list for this. And you'll note if you remix my project, I've already created it. It's called Speakers. Here it is. And this is set up for my dialog boxes, but you'll have to create your own otherwise. So the first line is the name of the costume, that is the dialog, Scratchy. And then item 2 and 3, that's the X and Y position of the top left corner of the text that wants to appear in this dialog. Rows 4 and 5, that's the bottom right corner, the X and Y position of this text dialog. So together they form a lovely rectangle that our text should stay within. Then in our list we have a gap, followed by the Nano costume, and their safe text rectangle, featuring the top left and the bottom right, 82 by negative 140. So as you can see, these are super easy to set up. So go ahead and configure these exactly how you want them in your game. So as you can see, this dialog is going to support multiple speakers, and that's really cool. But it means our text engine will need to know who is currently speaking. So in my Scratchy sprite, I'm going to I've already got a few scripts there. It doesn't matter anyway. In my Scratchy sprite, I'm going to create a new variable named speaker, and then put a hash on the end. So speaker number, and it's going to be for all sprites. Okay, and then set speaker number to the number of the speaker in this list that we want to be speaking. So number 1 for Scratchy. And then we need a way of recording what Scratchy is saying. So make a new list, naming it script, that's like the script of a play, and make it for all sprites. And then we're going to add to the script the things that we want them to say. So this is going to be a paragraph of text, and we'll write, hello, fellow Scratchers, yeah, got there in the end. Let's make it a little bit longer. How are you today? Hope you are well. I feel like I'm writing a card now, smiley face. And we want to better follow this up with more paragraphs of text, so let's duplicate that, and we'll add a second line that just says, Scratch on, guys. So that's what I want Scratchy to be saying, and if I hit the green flag, you can see these lines of text added to my script list. Except for one problem, if I click the green flag again, it adds it again and again, so we better clean up this list as the project starts, delete all from the script, and do that before we add anything to the list. Now when we run it, it's just those single 2 lines of text. Are you following along so far? I hope so. Because now our Scratchy sprite needs to broadcast and wait the message to our text engine. This new message is going to be play script. That's our script list from start to end. That gives it a good definition of what this script is going to do. And then we wait. And the great thing about that is it means we'll be able to load up our dialogue, let it play through our text engine, and then continue running our script once it returns to us at the other end. So this is cool because we've got everything set up now, ready to write our text engine scripts, because we now know exactly what we want to expect and how we want it to work. The trick now is just coding it. So click into the text engine sprite and bring in that when I receive play script from beginning to end, start to end. And the first thing I note is that there may already be some text on the screen, so it's a good idea to be able to delete all of those extra leftover clones right now, and we can do that using an if not block. An if not will always run, because then we can drop in a delete this clone. So when play script is broadcast, every single clone will get deleted, leaving only the original sprite, which is what we want. So let's make sure everything is in order. The first thing I want to do is bring this sprite to the front. I want all these letters to be in front of everything else on the screen. And I'll make doubly sure that we've hidden the original sprite and that we clear all graphical effects. It's always important that we start at a known state. And now I want to make this not red but white. And the way we do that is to set the brightness effect to 100. Don't believe me? Just click this script and then make it visible. And there you are. The red goes to white when it's set to a brightness of 100. Why then did I choose red in the first place? Well, that's because red is the most easily modifiable colour, and we can change it to lots of other colours and hues later on in our special effects. And now I want to position the sprite in the top left of the current dialog. So for that, let's create a new custom block, because we'll probably have to do this more than once. We'll name it reset page and make it run without screen refresh. Okay. Now put it in some free space, and we'll make use of it right away underneath our set brightness block. Okay, so we want to position this letter at the top left of the dialog, and that's given inside our speakers list that we defined earlier. So look in the motions and bring in a set X, and this is going to be the line 2 of our speakers. So get the item of, and it's of speakers. And we know it's currently Scratchy who's speaking. That was given by speaker hash, but it's then the next item that we want. So we want to add speaker hash, that gives us 1, and we want to add 1 to that to get to item 2. So speaker hash plus 1. That gives us the X value of our dialog. And we want to do the same for the Y value, set Y to, and then duplicate that from above, and it's speaker hash plus 2, giving us the top Y value. If speaker hash is set to 1 and the sprite is visible, then clicking this script should now show the sprite right where we wanted it at the top left of the dialog. Cool, that's all I wanted to do in that define reset page, so let's go back to the play scripts from start to end. And we're going to want the first line of our script, the first paragraph, so make a new variable, naming it paragraph, if you can spell it, for this sprite only, and click OK. And then set paragraph, right after resetting page, to item of list. Where's it gone? Item of list, and it's the script list this time. There we go, item 1 of script. And if I just run this whole thing right now, you should see our paragraph variable filled with the first paragraph of our script. And isn't it long? And that was very purposeful because I wanted to make sure that it's going to wrap around in our dialog box, because that's a really good test of our text engine working correctly. But we've got much work to do. Let's make a new custom block named process single paragraph. And unusually, do not tick the run without screen refresh, because animation is a really important factor of these text dialogues. So put that in some free space and drop the process single paragraph underneath our set paragraph block. Okay, are you ready to do some paragraph processing? How exciting! So we're going to need to process this paragraph a letter at a time, starting at the very first. And we need a variable to keep track of which letter we're on, and we'll call it letter index, letter IDX, and make it for this sprite only. And we're going to set this, when we start processing the paragraph, to letter 1. There we go, letter index 1. And then I would normally go rushing ahead and start outputting these letters one at a time. But let's just hold on, because remember that these letters could overflow at the end and wrap onto a new line. And when that happens, we don't want to be in the middle of a word. So to avoid this, we're going to work a word at a time. So we're going to make a new block named getNextWord of paragraph. And this time we can make it run without screen refresh, because this is going to happen quickly to find the next word. Now I know some of you will be thinking I'm making too many custom blocks here, but it really helps to chunk it up into little blocks so that we can understand our project better, and each script gets its own little name. So then in our process single paragraph script, after we've set letter index, we then get next word of paragraph. Shall we code up the get next word of paragraph? This is wanting to go through the paragraph variable one letter at a time, recording the letters into another variable, or we could use a list, and this is actually quite a clever way of doing it. I'll show you why in a second. Make a list called word for this sprite only, okay? And before we start building up this word, let's delete all of the word list, just to make sure it's all fresh and empty. And now we're going to loop through the letters until we find a gap. So to do that, we're going to actually use a forever loop and break out of it with a stop this script. Sometimes I like to be in full control of when I exit a loop, and the forever loop gives me that freedom. Okay, I need to know what letter we are currently at. So create a new variable named letter for this sprite only, and set letter to the operation block letter of, and the number of the letter is the letter index. Give me the letter index of our paragraph. Drop in the paragraph on the right hand side. And as soon as we've got that letter out of the paragraph, we can move our letter index on to the index of the next letter, the one we're going to read next. Change letter index by 1. That makes sure we're always moving forward through the paragraph. But now we're going to look to see whether the letter we just read is a space. We use an if for that underneath the change letter index, checking whether the letter is equal to, and we're looking for a space. There we are, that's a space in there, not an empty value. But we have to be careful here because we're not only looking for spaces, we also have to look for the empty value. That will be when we reach the end of the string and there's no more letters to return. So how can we check for an empty value or a space? Well, actually there's a clever little trick here. We can use the contains block, because it just so happens that the contains block always returns true for the empty value on the right. Everything contains the empty value. So if I was to put a space on the left-hand side, that also contains the empty value. And the only other value I can put on the right that will also contain a space is the space. So space contains letter is only true if letter is empty value or a space. Just remember that is a space contains letter, not the empty value contains letter. Just make sure you put a space in there. Good. I hope you got that. So if we have reached the end of this word, we can stop this script right in the middle of the forever loop, because we're going to continue now to build up our word if it wasn't a space. So below that if, add to our word list, that's the word list, the letter that we've just read in. This will be building up a list, a letter at a time. And it'd be really fun to see this in action. So click the process single paragraph, and there we have the word hello written out in my text engine word list. And you'll notice the list stopped before adding the space in, but the letter index has stopped on the F of the 7th letter in our thing, ready to read the next word. So that space has been skipped. And now here's a funky thing. Drag in the word list reporter and click it. And see how Scratch converts this list of individual row items of hello into the word hello as a single word. And this is a super useful feature with all sorts of uses. But for now, we can enjoy clicking on the Get Next Word block and seeing how the next word is populated into our word list, one word at a time. And the important thing is what happens when we reach the end. What we hope for is an empty word list, and the script stops and doesn't keep running forever, and that's why it was crucial to check for the empty value as well as the space. Okay, on we go. So moving back to the process single paragraph now, I'm overjoyed to announce we are finally going to output this first word onto the screen. Hallelujah, I hear you say. And about time. Well, you've been very patient, so well done for sticking with us so far. What we're going to do is create a new custom block, naming it Write Letters. And we're going to give it an input named count. This is the number of letters that we want this thing to write out. And for now, don't click the run without screen refresh, leave that blank. Okay, so straight after we've got the next word of paragraph, drop in the write letters and the number of letters we want to write out is the number of letters in the list, the word list. Length of word. That's how many letters are in our word we're about to write out. So let's start with a repeat block to repeat for each of those items and drop the count in to there. And now I don't know if you can find the original script we wrote for writing out letters when we were testing right back at the very start. Here it is, switching costume to W. We're going to reuse this again. So bring that down to our new write letters script. Here it is, and pop it straight into that repeat loop. And obviously we don't want to switch to costume W. We want to switch to the costume that matches the first letter of our word list. So bring in an item 1 of word. That'll be the capital H, and drop that into our set costume block. Now usually I would have an index variable so that we could then increment that on and look at the next letter. But rather than doing that in this case, because it's a list, I'm actually going to use a delete 1 of word. So every time we clone a letter, we then delete that letter from the list and then look at the next one. So we don't ever have to increment this from 1. It's always going to stay as 1 until there's no items left in the list at all. And our first word has finished cloning. So how about we give this a test? Hit that process single paragraph, and oh my gosh, look at that. We have the word hello on the screen, guys. Do you see that? That is amazing. Does it seem like rather a lot of work for this small little thing? Yes, I think it does. But don't worry, we're trying to build a really good foundation for some amazing things coming soon. So why don't we continue and start to write out the next word in our paragraph? How hard can it be? I think before we continue, I'll just hide this word list. There we are, it's a little bit better. So the next word we want is the fellow word. So I'll just move this write letters out of the way and we can continue with the process single paragraph script. We are currently getting a word and then writing it out. So we want to drag those off and we're going to put these in a loop. Bring in a forever loop and drop those inside. So now this will continually loop around, grabbing a word, writing it to the screen, and in the end, of course, there'll be no more words to read. So this should stop then, but we'll just run the script now and see what happens. Oh, look at that. Hello, fellow Scratchers. How are you today? I can read it, but there aren't any spaces between the words. Don't worry, we'll fix that soon. First, let's fix this forever loop so it stops once we've reached the end of the paragraph. Stick an if between the get next word and the write letters, and we're going to check what the current word is. So check if word is equal to the empty value. When there are no more words to read, we stop this script. Aha, that sounds about right. Let's run the project. There it goes again, typing out the text, and this time the project has stopped. So all's good? Well, actually not quite. There's one problem here. I can demonstrate it by clicking into the Scratchy sprite. And then when I've got my paragraph adding to the script list, put another space in between the hello and fellow. So we've got 2 spaces. And then run the project. And oh no, look, it's only written the word hello and then it's stopped. Why on earth did that happen? Well, unfortunately, when you have 2 spaces, our second get next word actually returns an empty word. And that is ending our script. So we need to check for 2 things. We need to check whether word is equal to the empty value, and only stop if the last letter read is also the empty value. We need both those checks for this to work successfully. Smash that green flag again, and we can check this out. Hello, fellow Scratchers. Excellent. The words are back, even though the spaces, again, aren't actually showing. Okay, let me just fix this double space. I don't want there to be 2 in there. And then back into the text engine. And shall we have a look now at trying to actually put in the spaces between the words? It'll look a lot better once they are there. Well, a simple way of doing this would be to drop in a change x by straight after we write letters. So we always have a space after each word. Then hit the green flag, and there we have it. All the words are now spaced out, in fact, rather spacily, but that's fine. All the words are spaced out, and it's looking very fine indeed. Except, oh no, what's happening on the right here? Do you see how the word is overlapping the edge of the dialog box? This is exactly what we do not want to happen. This word you needs to wrap onto the next line. But to do that, we need to know how wide this U is before we start drawing it. And that, of course, was the whole reason that we're reading it in a word at a time, so that we can process that word before we draw it. So how about we update this get next word of paragraph to also calculate the width of the word in pixels that it will be on the screen. Okay then, so every word should begin with a width of 0. So set the width variable to 0 before we start our loop, before the forever loop. And then to find the width of a particular letter, we of course need to switch to the right costume. So switch costume to, after the add to list, the letter variable. So we switch to the letter we've just got out of the paragraph, and then we want to change the width variable to add on the width of this new letter. Well, we just found that in the write letters block below. So let's duplicate that item costume name of font halves, and that is the width of this letter. Actually, no, it's half of the width of the letter. So we need to multiply that by 2. 2 times the item of costume number of font halves. And that should be it. That should give us the width of the whole word we've just read out, excluding the space, of course. And that is an important factor because we don't want the space to cause a wrap. Great. Let's see if we can use this width now. So back to the process single paragraph, we want to know now, after we've read the word in, can it fit on the end of the line before we write to the screen. So before the write letters, we have an if, and we have to check greater than, and we know this new word will end at the current X position, where we are right now, plus the width that we just calculated. So where's the width variable? There it is. So that is where the new text will end. And is it greater than the right-hand margin of our dialog box? Well, we have that in our speakers list, if you remember. It was top, left, bottom, right. So the right-hand margin must be this item 4, which is scratchy plus 3. So we want the item of speakers list. And then we need to have the addition block. Drop in the speaker hash variable, which is the scratchy. Give this a 1. And to that we want to add 1, 2, 3. So that will be speaker hash plus 3. And that should give us the right-hand margin, 196. Perfect. Drop that in onto the right-hand side of our comparison. This will now be true when the word will overflow our dialog. Excellent. We now need to move on to the next line before writing out the next word. And no, I'm not just going to drop some scripts into here. I'm going to create a new custom block for this because we'll use it again. Call it new line. And no, do not click the run without screen refresh, because when we have a new line, it's possible we've reached the end of the page and need to go on to the next one. So we need to wait for someone to press a key or something like that. So don't run without screen refresh. Drop that new line inside our if. Let's implement the define new line script. And it's a little bit like our reset page, because first of all, it does need to bring the cursor back to the left-hand side of the dialog. So duplicate those scripts in there, but the set Y, that doesn't work the same. So remove that completely. Instead of a set Y, we want a change Y to bring it down to the next line. Change Y by, and how much exactly? Well, you could just put a value in here that matches your font. I'm going to calculate it by using the font halves. This is the half width of a font, and I'm going to multiply the space, the first character, by -5. So the height of my font is -5 times the width, the half width actually. So really it's only 2.5 times, which is about right, I think. So what are we waiting for? Smash that green flag. And behold, our beautiful text is wrapping, and it's wrapping amazingly. You'll notice now that the word you wraps onto the next line before it even starts to draw it. And that's exactly what we're after, a really professional result. And the spacing of this font is looking absolutely beautiful, crisp and delicious. Not only that, but the text is appearing in that classic dialogue style. That is, gradually from the first to the last letter. This is going to look amazing in our games, right? Well, this is the end of episode 2. We've created some great code here, but it's just the start. There's so much to look forward to in episode 3, where we'll, well, I guess you'll have to wait and see just how much I can cram into it. But you get the gist. Well, that's it from me today. So until next time, have a great week ahead. and scratch on, guys.